Hello everyone, welcome to IELTS Speed Up course offered by Thompson School. In today's lesson, we are going to focus on IELTS Writing Task 2 Problem Solution Essays. So, in today's lesson, guys, we are going to discuss common mistakes. We will see how to analyze the question, how to think of ideas, and of course, you will be able to see a structure that can be used again and again on all problem solution IELTS essays. And of course, I will describe how to write an introduction, main body paragraphs, and conclusion. And of course, at the end, you will be able to see a full Band 9 sample answer. You should understand that in IELTS Writing Task 2, problem solution essays are very common, especially on the academic paper. Despite being very common, lots of students fail to do well in these questions. This lesson will look at some of the most common mistakes and then take you through how to answer these questions step by step, guys. Okay, guys, let's start from common mistakes. First, the most common mistake for problem solution essays is not expanding on your ideas, and instead, IELTS candidates are likely to simply list lots of problems and solutions. The examiner doesn't want a list of all the problems and solutions you can think of, and please do not do this in the exam. Instead, if you look at how the exam is marked, the examiner wants you to pick one or two problems and solutions and then expand on them with explanation and examples. So you should remember that you're not going to receive a high score if you have lots of problems and solutions. It doesn't have to do anything with the number of problems and solutions you're offering, but instead focus on one or two problems and solutions and expand on them. Try to explain them in a more detailed way. Second, another common mistake is writing about problems and solutions that are not directly linked to the question. So you should be like a sniper when answering the question and only give very specific ideas, rather than ideas that are general, and of course avoid talking about overall issue. Okay, now for this, you should focus on choosing appropriate keywords that are going to define the situation, and of course, we will go through the keywords and techniques that are going to help you to choose proper words. Next, lots of people think of good ideas for problems and then fail to link their solutions to these problems. Each problem should have a solution that is directly linked to it, or in other words, should solve the actual problem. So when you're thinking of certain problem or issue, you should at the same time come up with proper solution, and this solution must be directly linked to the issue that you are stating. And finally, some candidates think of really good problems and solutions that answer the question properly and then expand their answers with explanations and examples. But the issue is they talk in a very general way. Instead, you should be thinking of specific examples and explanations. Okay, guys, when it comes to analyzing the question, you should understand that this is the most important part of answering any IELTS writing question. You should think, you should understand the topic, and you should take the time to properly think about the topic and of course what the examiner is asking you to do, because without understanding and analyzing the question, it's going to be very difficult to answer the question correctly. So we analyze the question by thinking about three things. These are keywords, micro keywords, and action words. So keywords are the words that tell us what the general topic is. Okay? Micro keywords identify which part of the general topic the examiner wants you to talk about. Okay? You probably imagine situation. So keywords will tell you what is the topic about, but it's going to be very huge and big. So micro keywords will specify which area of this topic you should be focusing on. And of course, action words tell us what the examiner wants us to do. You probably get it, right? Now, let's consider this topic here. Global warming is one of the biggest threats humans face in the 21st century, and sea levels are continuing to rise at alarming rates. What problems are associated with this, and what are some possible solutions? Now, if we look at this topic, we can see that keyword is global warming. So you probably understand it because the topic is about global warming. But global warming is very huge topic, and that's the reason why micro keywords specify its field of focus. So you should be focusing on humans and sea level rise. So one of the biggest threats humans face, and now sea levels are continuing to rise at alarming rates. So instead of writing just about the huge topic of global warming and any problems associated with that, such as increased storms, extinction of certain animals, erosion of soil, and many other problems, we have to talk about how particularly sea level rises will affect humans. So if you talk about problems affecting the planet or animal kingdom, or let's say the atmosphere, you would not be answering the question at all. And when it comes to the action words, these are problems and solutions, because examiner clearly wants us to focus on problems and solutions. So what problems are associated with this, and what are some possible solutions? So our task is therefore to write about that and only that. It doesn't ask our opinion or about the disadvantages and advantages or about the causes, just the problems and solutions. Okay? Now let's talk about generating ideas. So how to think of ideas? Most of the time, many IELTS candidates prefer to use brainstorming or mind mapping strategies in order to generate some ideas. But you should understand that these strategies may take too much time and lead to irrelevant ideas. So it's always better if you just pretend that you are in a coffee shop with a friend and they have just asked you a simple question. In this case, it would be, what are the problems and solutions associated with sea level rise on humans? So if you were talking to a friend about this, I'm sure you would have no problem thinking of at least 2 or 3 problems and solutions. So this method is very helpful because it can take your mind out of exam situation and put it in a more relaxed environment. Try it and see. Now, let's consider these problems and solutions. Okay, first, flooding of people's homes and businesses. Okay, this is the first problem regarding sea level rise on humans, and what is the solution? Build flood barriers or move to higher areas. So, next problem, loss of agricultural land and starvation. So, the solution is going to be switch to more suitable crops. Okay, next problem, displacement of millions of people. Okay, solution, move people in a planned and orderly way before the floods. Okay, next problem, groundwater undrinkable. Okay, solution, build desalination plants. Okay, as you can see, okay, we don't have a lot of ideas regarding problems and solutions. So, for each problem, you should think of a solution that directly solves this problem. So, sometimes students come up with several solutions to one single problem, but it may be irrelevant from time to time. That's the reason why you should always choose the most appropriate solution that directly solves and actually helps to reduce the influence of certain issue. Now, you have a lot of ideas, but you should understand that you should not be using all of them, but you should decide which ones you're going to use. I always tell my students to pick the ones you know most about. It means you can explain this problem and solution, and of course give relevant examples. Now let's talk about general structure that can be used for any problem solution IELTS essay. So I always recommend my students to use a basic 4 paragraph structure. So your 4 paragraphs are going to look like this. Paragraph 1 is going to be your introduction, paragraph 2 problems, paragraph 3 solutions, and paragraph 4 conclusion. Okay? At a sentence level, your structure is going to look like something like this. Introduction, sentence 1 is going to be simply paraphrased question. Sentence 2 is going to be an outline sentence where you should say what you will discuss in the rest of the essay. And of course, when it comes to the next paragraph, body paragraph number 1 dedicated to problems, sentence number 3 is going to be about problem. So you should state a problem. Now, in the next sentence, you should explain what the problem is. And in the following sentence, you should talk about the result of this problem and then exemplify. Okay? When it comes to the next paragraph, solutions, you should start from stating solution, then explain how the solution will solve the problem, and then provide with an example. And when it comes to the last paragraph, conclusion, sentence number 10, okay, you should start from summarizing the main points in paragraphs 2 and 3. And in the next sentence, you can use prediction or recommendation. So you can predict that if this happens, then this will not happen anymore. Okay? Or certain recommendation. And technically, that's it. 11 sentences that can be used again and again for any problem solution IELTS essay. So you should understand that some students have commented that this structure only has one problem and one solution, and they are worried this will not be enough to get 250 words. In my experiences, one problem and one solution is more than enough if you answer properly and expand each idea. However, if you think that this is not going to be enough, feel free to add more problems and solutions. But remember, you should use the general structure again. Okay, when you're adding certain problem, state problem, explain what the problem is, what is the result of this problem, then exemplify. And the same structure, okay, for solutions. Now let's talk about an introductory paragraph of your essay. So your introduction for problem solution essays will have two sentences: a paraphrase of the question and an outline statement. So paraphrasing is simply saying the sentence again with different words but with the same meaning. You can do this by using synonyms and changing the order of the words. So let's consider this question here. Global warming is one of the biggest threats humans face in the 21st century, and sea levels are continuing to rise at alarming rates. So, paraphrased version is going to be: climate change is among the principal dangers facing people this century, and ocean levels are increasing dramatically. As you can see, I've used synonyms to change the words of the questions, but it still has the same meaning. So you should remember, the examiner will be looking for your ability to do this in the exam. Okay, our outline sentence is going to be next, and this is going to tell the examiner what they are going to read in the rest of the essay. Okay, now outline sentence is going to be: this essay will first suggest that the biggest problem caused by this phenomenon is the flooding of homes, and then submit building flood protection as the most viable solution. So I hope it was clear, and our overall introduction is going to be, okay, climate change is among the principal dangers facing people this century, and ocean levels are increasing dramatically. This essay will first suggest that the biggest problem caused by this phenomenon is the flooding of homes, and then submit building flood protection as the most viable solution. Okay? As you can see, we don't have a thesis statement because this particular question doesn't ask us for our opinion. However, IELTS problem solution questions sometimes do ask you for your opinion, and you should then include a thesis statement. So keep in mind. Now, next paragraph is going to be first body paragraph dedicated to problems, and this is the structure. Sentence 1, stating the problem, then explaining what is the problem is, and then what is the result of this problem, and then of course proper example. Okay, let's start from stating the problem. The foremost problem caused by climbing sea levels is the flooding of people's residences. So this is our statement. Okay, we are stating the problem. Now we have stated the problem, we must explain what this is. You should always consider your audience to be someone with no specialist knowledge in this area, and you therefore need to explain what everything means. Do not assume that the IELTS examiner is an educated person and knows what you're talking about. These assumptions will stop you writing what you need. So you should be always explaining everything in a very detailed way. So the best way to do this is assuming that the reader is a person who has no idea about this topic. Okay? Now, this is going to be an explanation. Millions of people all over the world live in coastal areas, and if the sea rises by even a few feet, they will be inundated with water and lose their property. Okay? So, this is the explanation why this is dangerous, because millions of people are likely to lose their property if this happens. Okay, now we should talk about the result. Shelter is one of the most basic of human needs, and widespread flooding would cause millions of people to become homeless, not to mention losing all of their possessions. So, this is going to be the result. So, potential result if this happens. Now, we must give an example. Okay? Now, lots of people in the world have experienced floods recently. Okay, this is far too general to be considered a good example. So let's consider this example. The devastation brought about by widespread flooding was clear for all to see during the 2011 tsunami in Japan, in which millions of people were displaced. So, this example is much more specific. Now, you should understand the difference. You should choose an example that is not too general and try to be more specific. Okay? This is our second paragraph, guys, dedicated to problems. Now we will focus on solutions paragraph. So you probably remember the general structure: sentence 1 stating the solution, then explain how this solution will solve the problem, and then exemplify. So, stating solution. A possible solution to this problem would be to build flood barriers. Okay, this is our proposal, guys, and okay, we now need to explain how our solution will help to solve the problem. And again, do not assume that the examiner has any specialist knowledge of this topic. Okay, now flood defenses such as dikes, dams, and flood gates could be built along coasts and waterways, thereby stopping the water reaching populated areas. So this is how it's going to be helpful, guys. And now our example. The Netherlands is one of the most populated areas in the world and also one of the most vulnerable to flooding, and they have successfully employed various flood defense systems. Okay, this is going to be our example, and now our whole solutions paragraph is here. A possible solution to this problem would be to build flood barriers. Flood defenses such as dikes, dams, and flood gates could be built along coasts and waterways, thereby stopping the water reaching populated areas. The Netherlands is one of the most populated areas in the world and also one of the most vulnerable to flooding, and they have successfully employed various flood defense systems. Okay, now the last paragraph, conclusion. Okay, you should remember that the conclusion should not have any new ideas, but instead you should simply list the main points, summarize them, and of course you can also use some strategies and add prediction or recommendation. Now, to conclude, Stemming the rising tides caused by increasing global temperatures is one of the foremost challenges we face, and it will ultimately lead to many of the world's cities being left underwater. But a possible solution could be to utilize the flood prevention techniques already used by countries like Holland. It is also possible to make a recommendation or prediction. This should only be used if you have time and you are over the word limit already. So, in a perfect world, this is going to be enough to finish your conclusion. But if you have some time, so you can add some prediction. So it is predicted that more and more countries will be forced to take such measures to avoid a watery catastrophe. Okay, so this is going to be a prediction. Now, this is the conclusion. So overall, it's going to look something like this. And now guys, here you can see full sample essay. So the topic is same guys, global warming is one of the biggest threats humans face in the 21st century, and sea levels are continuing to rise at alarming rates. So climate change is among the principal dangers facing people this century, and ocean levels are increasing dramatically. This essay will first suggest that the biggest problem caused by this phenomenon is the flooding of homes, and then submit building flood protection as the most viable solution. The foremost problem caused by sea levels creeping up is the flooding of people's residences. Millions of people all over the world live in coastal areas, and if the sea rises by even a few feet, they will be inundated with water and lose their property. Shelter is one of the most basic of human needs, and widespread flooding would cause millions of people to become homeless, not to mention losing all of their possessions. The devastation brought about by this was clear for all to see during the 2011 tsunami in Japan, in which millions of people were displaced. A possible solution to this problem would be to build flood barriers. Flood defenses such as dikes, dams, and floodgates could be built along coasts and waterways, thereby stopping the water reaching populated areas. The Netherlands is one of the most populated areas in the world and also one of the most vulnerable to flooding, and they have successfully employed various flood defense systems. To conclude, stemming the rising tides caused by increasing global temperatures is one of the foremost challenges and we face, and it will ultimately lead to many of the world's cities being left underwater. But a possible solution could be to utilize the flood prevention techniques already used by countries like Holland. It is predicted that more and more countries will be forced to take such measures to avoid a watery catastrophe. Okay, here we have 200 and 81 words guys. So as you can see, even with one problem and one solution, you can reach a good amount of words. So your home assignment guys will be sent to you through the Telegram group, and you must submit it as soon as possible guys. This is the end of our lesson. Thanks for your attention guys, and see you next time.